our panel today is called Finding and Building an Audience for Your Content. Today we have Chloe Sosa-Sims, Senior Advisor in Acquisition Unscripted at CBC. We also have Vanessa Case, Vice President of Content, Paramount Plus and Pluto TV Canada. And we also have Julie Kumaria of Hollywood Suites. She's a Senior Vice President, Marketing and Content Distribution. And we have, the panel will be moderated today by Shivani, Saini, founders of Creative Empowered. Thank you all.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Shivani, and I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit in Alberta called Creatives Empowered, which is specifically for Black, Indigenous, and people of color who live, work, and play in that colonial boundary, who are from emerging to established, and who work also in film, television, media, and the arts. And the Reelworld Summit has quickly become one of my favorite conferences to attend. And I happened to be standing beside Tanya Williams when she found out that Katon unfortunately couldn't join us today, so I offered to step in. So here I am, and I'm just going to quickly read off the description for this panel. So producers often spend their last dime getting a project made. We heard a lot of stories about that already at the conference, only for it to get lost among projects with bigger marketing budgets. So it's vital to begin thinking about your target audience while you're still in production and develop a strategy and a budget with that in mind. And the acquisitions and marketing experts on this panel will provide tips and insights to help you maximize your efforts when it comes to audience growth, discoverability, and awareness of your next project. And I also just want to give a huge shout out to Katon, who took the time to prepare all of these great questions I'm now going to ask. We want to talk first of all about the state of audience development. And I'm going to start with Julie from Hollywood Suite. So Hollywood Suite focuses on niche programming and classic films. So how does a more niche service like Hollywood Suite approach audience growth in an era dominated by larger platforms?
So, I mean, it's funny because I never think of us as niche. I think of us as independent, which is a little bit different. But I think when we're looking at audiences and we're looking at how to get people in, we have classic films. So the classic films, like if we put Keanu on, we're getting numbers, we're getting good engagement. But it's about how we can profile some of those smaller films, and that's where the opportunity lies. So we're a broadcaster within the traditional system. We're also on Amazon Prime Video. And so we're reaching different audiences with different needs. And so I think how we get to those audiences is that we work with producers. We have a very casual, I think it's our independent mindset, but we're very casual with producers. We start working with them early, and we want to know from them, who's your audience? Who's this for? How can we work with you at the beginning? It doesn't help us when, something happens and it's like, we didn't have preparation. We weren't able to find your audience. We weren't able to work with you. And I think our relationship with Reelworld, we've met a lot of emerging producers and creatives who get that. They're starting to think like marketers, and I love that myself.
Okay, and Vanessa, how does a global platform like Paramount Plus balance the challenge of catering to local Canadian audiences while being part of a more prominent international brand? So what strategies does Paramount Plus use to acquire and retain audiences in a competitive landscape?
And I think so, recognizing that I'm the streamer on the platform, and that it is, we're all going to bring a different perspective to this in terms of how we speak to Canadian audiences and retain them. For Paramount Plus, and recognizing that it is a U.S. studio, and Paramount being a U.S. brand that, of course, has a 100-plus year history in Hollywood, but we are a global brand, and being in Canada, we're very much connected to the hip with being in North America, and our Canadian audience is much like a lot of conventional TV is used to seeing a lot of the Hollywood hits that come across the border. We do have, we are very dependent on creating a platform that is delivering premium quality. And with that, we are very dependent on a lot of what comes out of that Paramount brand and all of the IP and different brands that sit within that. So that is the expectation of how we retain users and get people to subscribe. We speak to Canadian audiences through unique Canadian acquisitions, pre-buys, and to date, we haven't done a lot of Canadian original content. That being said, Paramount has a pretty aggressive arm within production within Canada, where not only hiring, casting, and crewing for productions such as Star Trek, Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Ghosts, Mayor of Kingstown, and the list is much longer. While these aren't specifically Canadian productions, we've been able to work with Canadians. Canadians can see their presence within some of these locations, productions, and so on. And I think while that's an area that is certainly growing and expanding for the streaming services and for us, it's one that we hope to be more prominent in as we continue this journey within streaming. But we're truly trying to maximize our opportunity with bringing the best content and quality content, premium nature, paired with what we're getting across the US from CBS and the Paramount Plus brand, and then bringing it with smart Canadian acquisitions and pre-buys that might come from many of you and the production community.
Thank you. And over to Chloe from CBC. So as a public broadcaster and a creator of original content, how do you adapt your audience building strategies for digital platforms while maintaining relevance for traditional TV viewers?
Yeah, and thanks so much for having me today. Yeah, this is a conversation we're having a lot internally right now. I should say I work on the acquisition side, so my perspective is very much looking at completed content as opposed to commission titles. But what I will say is, yeah, we've really sort of thought about our digital first focus as much as possible. So what that means is CBC Gem. And we are starting to launch some of our content on YouTube as well. And that's a real effort to target the 30 to 49 demo. So 30 to 49 is very important for us in terms of like our current relevance and future relevance. It's actually a much more diverse population, and it represents a quarter of Canadians, and so it's definitely a priority for us right now. And yeah, I think we're just really sort of considering how, not only finding content that's relevant to that particular target demo, but how we can engage those viewers online. So whether they can find us on CBC Gem or on CBC Docs on YouTube.
Well, thank you. So we've touched on state of audience development, and what we want to do now is kind of do a bit of a deep dive and shift to strategies for audience engagement. So this question is to all of you, and Julie, we can start with you. So can you share an example of a campaign or a strategy that has been particularly successful in drawing new audiences or increasing engagement with existing ones, and what key factors made it a success?
For sure. We are one of the biggest buyers, although we say internally we are the biggest, but I'm scared to say that on a panel, of Canadian content. So there's a nice asterisk on that. And so being that we've put ourselves in this position where we're really trying to cultivate and find Canadian content and good Canadian content, we've worked with some incredible creators. There was a series, Potluck Ladies, Shazia might be here, and what an incredible experience it was for us internally, because we have 1,600 films on our catalog. We have a lot of priorities. We're subscription driven, so we're really about getting the ROI in everything that we're doing. And we had an opportunity to work with a very smart creative team who knew who their audience was, knew how to get their audience involved. We worked with them to really cultivate that, and it turns up in the numbers. And so I'm really encouraged seeing some of this Canadian content that's bubbling up to the top, because the creators are saying, I know who my audience is, I know who I made this for, I really want them to engage with it, and here's some ways that I think that we can do it. I'd say also in audience development, Shaftesbury with the slasher series, the grossest kill scenes I've ever seen in my life, and the smart team that knows that their audience is going to keep coming back. So I feel really encouraged that there's a lot going on, that we can cultivate that audience, keep that audience, and when it starts to show not only in engagement on social, really strong PR, it's also we're seeing the views. And to me, that's really full circle. We don't have huge budgets, so if I'm spending money, it has to be incredibly targeted. I want to see, we set really strict strategies on what it is we're trying to achieve with every dollar we spend. And so when we do things with creators like that get it and want to be part of that, to me, that's the most exciting part.
All right, we'll throw that question over to you.
Yeah, I think I do want to highlight, what you introduced is what this panel is about, and noting that marketing budgets need to stretch a long way nowadays. And so while that's an area that everything can't get the attention in the marketing, every piece of content can't get the attention in marketing it deserves, doing a really big, strong campaign, of which I'll give you an example, really helps us prop up other content and leverage it within a platform like a streaming service where we can marquee and promote and really find supportive tissue to there. But I would be remiss if I didn't highlight, obviously, our biggest strategic play in bringing the Yellowstone franchise to Paramount Plus. It is a very important brand for us, but it used to be on Amazon, and we are an Amazon channel as well, or we are a service on Amazon, but it is now exclusively on Paramount Plus. Bringing that over and using the marketing and leverage of bringing that brand to Paramount Plus, launching a new season, backing it up, and then following it up with 1923, and then also supporting it with the earlier 1883 that was already sitting on the platform. If you don't know Yellowstone, you won't necessarily know all of these franchises, but all those 3 series give you the entire history to the Dutton family. We have new seasons launching November 10th. Point being, that campaign and what that campaign can do and the marketing behind that brings so much attention to the platform that we can put like-minded documentaries, we can put like-minded Canadian series, we can put like-minded other scripted series, we can leverage library within the platform and surround it by that content and that marketing, and it has such a tremendous effect on the watch time of those shows, on how long people stay on platform, why they come back again and again. So while it is very relevant that is a critical campaign to bring in and retain viewers, what it does for other content that we will be very strategically leveraging at that time is also equally as critical.
Okay, thank you. And Chloe?
Yeah, well, I think what CBC can offer that international streamers can't is sort of a more local approach to content, which comes on our commissioning side, but even on our acquisition side, I wanted to highlight a title that we acquired last year called Lac Mégantic. It was a 3-part documentary series about the rail tragedy in Lac Mégantic, Quebec. And it was just such a huge hit for us in terms of performance. Audiences really engaged with it across CBC Gem and CBC Mainnet. And I think it really highlighted, number one, the storytelling was exceptional in it. If you're not familiar with the story, it's about the rail tragedy in Lac Mégantic, where a freight train carrying crude oil literally just fell down the track and derailed into the town and killed 47 people. It was such a significant tragedy in the storytelling of this series. It was just so high tension, such amazing access to the characters, such high production values. And I was so proud that so many Canadians connected with it, and it really proved to me that Canadians want to connect with Canadian stories. It was the 10th anniversary. They really wanted to honor this community and find out about this story. And I think that was just a great example of an acquisition that really connected with Canadians, both in our 30 to 49 demo and our 50 plus demo. And even with limited marketing capacity, I would say it was just very relevant because of the time frame. It was the 10-year anniversary. It was beautifully told. There was a dramatic story that had come out about it. So really thinking about bringing a story to an audience at a relevant moment when they're really ready to connect with that, I think that makes a huge difference in terms of building an audience as well.
Right. So we'd like to talk about emerging trends in audience behavior. And for Julie, we're going to ask, how have you seen audience behaviors shift regarding their engagement with niche versus mainstream content? And how does that impact how Hollywood Suite plans its programming?
So, what we're seeing, we have two different audiences. In the traditional space, they're very lean back. So if we're showing a John Hughes film or something from their childhood, that is a very lean back audience. They'll watch at any point in time. They're just tuning in from the EPG in a very traditional sense. In our Amazon Prime video channel world, we're swim lanes and they're making selections. So it's funny for us when we look at the data that between those two different demographics and those two different audience sets, that they're engaging with content very differently. I think that shows us that traditional TV is still alive, and it still has an audience, and we've got really strong distribution on those platforms, and that's very helpful to us. And then it also shows us that and we're highly curated on the linear side as well with our programming. And then in the Amazon world, we're just a swim lane. So it's people really have to be captured by things like artwork. They have to know the title. The metadata has to be correct. Like there's a lot of that sort of intricate pieces to merchandise that I think are really valuable. We try to stunt. We do a fair bit of advertising in that platform to drive people into certain content and highlight it. So we're hitting two different markets very separately, and so for that, I think it's about making sure that audiences have awareness, and that's why all that outside noise is so important to us. Are we doing enough PR? Are we getting opportunities in the traditional space? There's something that I know we're going to talk about some tips and tricks at the end, but we can access something called US ad avails. So channels like CNN and A&E give programmers like myself or broadcasters like myself inventory. So you'll see Canadian content being promoted in that landscape that otherwise would have not had the opportunity. So we really love to be able to push in that audience that way and then program quite separately, I'd say, on the more digital space.
Okay, thank you. And Vanessa, so with Paramount Plus exploring both on-demand streaming and live content, what trends are you seeing in viewer preferences between the two formats?
I'm going to actually put my attention towards Pluto TV, which plays a lot into what Julie was just talking about and the traditional TV model. So Pluto TV, which is part of the streaming environment within Paramount. We've got Paramount Plus, the premium SVOD service, and then we've got Pluto TV, which is a fast TV, also an international service. If anybody isn't overly familiar or even familiar with fast, free advertising television, please let me know. Happy to chat with you about it. I've done 101s on this before because it is it's an established, but it's still a newly learned established platform that is growing at a tremendous rate. But to the points that Julie was making, fast is much more of a traditional viewing experience. It is provided most likely through your connected TV or your mobile app or a web browser, connected TV being the growing one. And the reason that I bring it in relation to that, I mention it in relation to that question is because on Pluto TV, much like in a linear platform, we can do live content. And while we do tend to obviously acquire a lot of content and run it as a linear platform and also on demand. And we have examples of viewing audiences bouncing between on-demand and linear quite aggressively, and we've got very devoted on-demand viewers and very devoted linear viewers, and so there's a constant analysis on how we're speaking to those as they bounce back and forth and as we add new channels and new content. On the live front, we do have things like the MTV Music Video Awards. Like we're doing the EMA Music Awards, and recently we just did our big first live sporting event, the GT20 cricket event, which was really, I'll use that one as an example, because to take a platform like Pluto, which is the fast environment, put on a live event like a cricket tournament that is a sporting event, a little unpredictable, weather changes the timing, teams changing the timing, live sporting events change timing constantly. We were able to still deliver this, but then when the games weren't playing, we were very much targeting with very specifically acquired content to the demographic that would be most attracted to the cricket environment. So people who we know were coming in for cricket, we then gave them news, content, dramas, and other things that we were able to acquire and support. So we're able to speak to very targeted audiences like that example that bring in big amounts of viewing and user base, but then we speak to mass audiences like the MTV Awards, which I mentioned, another live event that'll speak to the masses. They may come for that event, enjoy, but they won't necessarily stay. We go back to the linear platform and the VOD, where we can attract people with more regular programming, more like a traditional broadcaster.
And then Chloe, what role do social media and digital platforms like GEM play in how CBC engages younger or more digitally native audiences?
Yeah, I mean, we have an amazing digital team who, looks at the content that we're releasing and chooses like strong clips and articles to promote on our CBC landing page, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and I think really like my responsibility is to find the content that's going to work for social, and that's going to have that clickability and appeal. And so, one of the major strands that we acquire for is The Passionate Eye. It's our flagship documentary strand. It's sort of, it used to be more of like a current affairs strand, but it's really become more of a strand that's about starting conversations, sort of like the story behind the headlines. And I can give two examples of titles that were, we had very strong engagement on social media, and that actually led viewers to CBC Gem, which was wonderful. So last year we had a title called The Secret World of Incels. I think it has a very natural online appeal for obvious reasons. And it just gave you really amazing access to these men and their behavior and why they had the thoughts that they had. And then we also had a title called Is Anybody Out There, which was about a filmmaker who had a very rare disability, and they were looking for someone who had a body like them. And I remember we released this article on CBC that had this very striking photo and a very personal headline, something like, I have a very unusual body, trying to find someone else who does as well. And that, that one article drove so many viewers to check out the film out on CBC Gem. And I think, the multi-platform approach really has shown us that that's how we can reach 30 to 49 audience when it's the right content, and they will come find us on CBC Gem and hopefully YouTube soon as well.
All right, so we're gonna shift the conversation now to challenges and opportunities. So this is to all of you. What are your biggest challenges when growing and retaining audiences today? And conversely, where do you see the most significant opportunities for content creators and platforms to break through?
I mean, the challenges are budgets. There's only so much, and we're trying to, we've recently stepped into series, and so when we're doing campaigns, we typically are looking at those as, this is our pillar, and this is what we're going to put our our budget towards. And then we are able to do things to get other audiences onto other programming. But it's, the budgets are tough, and breaking through is tough with especially being an independent. But I think that the opportunities are there to cultivate audience from an early time. And we're even seeing in some of our social trends, our best performing, we really supply content from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So we're really decade focused in terms of our films. And we're starting to see engagement with older content from younger audiences. And so clips from films from the 70s are resonating in a very different way and being reintroduced. And so we're doing a lot of things to reach audiences and bring them in. And, I have 2 teenage daughters who are listening to the soundtrack from Stand By Me, which is odd to me, because I also listen to it. But there is a look back that's happening, which I find really encouraging for our brand, for sure. So I think the opportunities are making sure that you're able to support things from the beginning. We love it when filmmakers come to us and they say, maybe we're not first window, maybe we're second window, but if we're first window, they come to us and say, I really want to do festivals and I really want to go out there. We want them to find that audience. Please bring us something. Bring us a nugget that we can work with, that we can say, okay, this has been here, get all the laurels, all the awards, bring them back, because that just heightens our ability to support those projects and those films.
I think I'll bring, I would echo, budget is always a challenge, and we always want more than is available to be able to do what we need to do. But I would say one of the biggest challenges facing looking at the streaming world is we are all, and I'll speak for myself, and while I do this and I love what I do, I go home and I'm a consumer like everybody else is, and I look at my credit card bill and I figure out what I can afford to keep paying for and what I need to change. And that is the challenge of a streaming service, and are we giving everybody a reason who's come to try us and explore within the platform a reason to stay. And that's the same reason that we're asking ourselves for all streaming services and our cable bills and our phone bills and all those things. And I think we have to deliver from a marketing perspective, so you know what it is you're getting, you know the value of a brand, but we have to deliver on that content. And I think it speaks a bit to what you were just mentioning, Julie, in that if you know we're delivering award-winning content, if you know that we're delivering content that you trust, if there's something that you watch and we give you something, again, more that you want to watch, if we can reintroduce a library of 100-plus-year-old studio that has some of the most classic series and TV movies in the industry, and reintroduce them to a new audience that gives you reason to stay, then we know we're doing our job. But it never stops, because you're always going to be analyzing, can I keep affording this? Can I do this? And I think that's our reality now. And I think what we also need to always do across all streaming is make it as easy for the viewer. And again, a consumer wants to sit down on a Friday night and choose a movie, or has a movie or a genre in their head that they want to watch. They don't want to bounce around and try and explore where they can find it and only to be disappointed, because we need to ensure that consumers have the easiest opportunity to watch the type of content that they want to watch. And that speaks to how we present it to you, but also the operations, the technology, and so much else, which just layers into all the decisions. But it's an ongoing development and an ongoing evolution of how we keep doing this better.
Okay, thank you. And Chloe?
Yeah, I think obviously with CBC Gem, I think it's just it's a marketing challenge, and just Canadians knowing that it exists and associating CBC Gem with the best in documentary content. That's going to continue to be the challenge, and all I can, from an acquisition side, we're just trying to bring the best content we can to CBC Gem, and I hope that the marketing will continue and more Canadians will discover it. And hopefully as well, with having launched content on YouTube, people will find out about CBC from there as well. I think that's a really good opportunity to get more people exposed to the brand and associate CBC with the best in Canadian content. So yeah, we'll see.
Okay. So we're going to move on to giving out advice for content creators. And what advice would you give to creators in the audience on identifying and growing their audience early in the content development process? Who would like to go first?
Yeah, I think it's about that starting early and knowing who you're making your content for and understanding the potential of it. And we are working with lots of creators now that really understand that. They're getting the materials together. They're understanding that it starts early. We work with a team who 5-7 Films, and they've got a bunch of films that we've licensed, and they talk to us before they start shooting, and they're saying, this is what we're doing, and they're thinking like marketers, and they're thinking about audience development, and they're thinking about how to create that long tail of awareness. And so when we work with them, we know what we're getting. We know that we might have to rein them in a little bit, but they're thinking about how to reach people, how to get them early, how to get the word out there. They are really good at getting press from day one. And so when we get a project from them and we're starting to figure out what our plan is, we're not starting it, we're continuing what they've already started, and we've been able to support them. We've had filmmakers call us and say, I'm in a festival tonight, can you guys help? And we're like, it would have been awesome to know this 2 weeks ago. We would have sent somebody, is there a Q&A? And we want to be part of that, and we don't want to phone it in because we're small and we're independent, and we really do care about these projects getting awareness, that we want to be able to be as helpful as possible. So I think when we have a little bit more time and we understand the roadmap, we can jump in and support in a bigger, more meaningful way.
I think what I'm going to suggest to content creators is consider partnerships, and I mean that in a lot of different ways. And that if you've got an original idea and you're bringing in it as a concept, you have to think about the path of if you're one of many ideas, and how many pieces of content get made every year by any particular commissioner or platform. And so if you can find partnerships, be it with other like-minded producers that might help you leverage that and get your project moving forward faster. Partner with a distributor, speak to them, find out how excuse me, it would work in an international market, and if there's other territories, global territories, that might be able to be part of the financing, or you could see a sales opportunity with it down the road. Talk to, I don't know, like obviously the agencies and the funding agencies, but partnerships are a really key way to help elevate and bring your project forward, and I think help it move faster. If you think of the life cycle of how long it takes for a scripted project to get made, it is very long. So you do want to come in with something that's already better, more established potentially. I think we've got examples of projects on the documentary side and on the unscripted side where producers have brought it to us with a portion of it already financed. So not in production, fully developed, but they've already secured a piece of the financing. We can have a much more advanced conversation about that piece of creative because we can see what it would look like, we can know when it could deliver, than something that comes in right at the beginning with not a lot, with expecting a hefty development or expecting the full freight to be paid for by just one service. We've got scripted projects that we've even said to the producers, go talk to CBC. We'll window with them. We'll find ways, even within Canada, to do windowing with other partners to get content made, because if you just count on one platform, it's going to be very difficult these days. And I think we're all, I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody else, but finding ways to window even within our own territory is something that is very realistic to leverage a great piece of content and really see it to its completion.
Chloe.
Yeah, I would say just consider how your content could be really relevant to a digital audience. So just keeping in mind things like relevance. Is there like a topical marketing hook that would make your content discoverable on even a platform like YouTube? I would say curiosity. We're really looking for content that brings unique perspectives, a new take on an idea, something really buzzy that people haven't heard before. Forward thinking, so being reactive and even anticipating trends in society. And then, of course, for CBC, still content that's trustworthy and has journalistic integrity. All of these sort of elements are really important in terms of considering a digital audience. So, yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I know we need to wrap it up. Is it possible to just open up to just a few cues from the audience? I think we should be okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so I see a gentleman up there with a red hat on. I don't know if we can get a mic to him, but if you can project. Go ahead.
From CBC, I feel like, my name is Lindsay here. I'm a filmmaker. From Chloe,
Yes.
I'm hearing a lot about documentaries from the CBC Gem. I think basically my question is, what are you looking for? Like, what kind of genres are you looking for? Like, I had a friend who's working for Amazon who's saying, we're looking for like half-hour comedies right now. Like that's kind of like the niche that we've got. And so the idea of like, knowing your audience and saying, look, this is what we like. Because when I think of CBC, I think of relatively safe projects, like my Black Mirror anthology series-ish, kind of style genre thing that I want to do. I don't think to go to CBC with that. So when we talk about finding an audience for your content, there is an audience for a Black Mirror anthology series. It's out there. But it's also partnering with the right person that believes that that's the audience that they want to speak to. So I guess what I'm asking is, what are your thoughts about taking chances on something that you're looking for fresh thoughts and innovative things, going outside of your mandate and taking a chance on a project? Like, is that not a thing anymore because of like the sheer numbers? You're just like, nah, we need it tried and true. We need a machine that's already going. You need to. You talked about having the machine, kind of like coming on board with some financing already done. Like, what is that? What kind of climate is that? Like, what kind of chance does a guy with a great idea, quote unquote, and a glint in his eye, but not a full machine behind him? What kind of chance do we have with y'all?
Well, yeah, sorry, I didn't really get to explain at the beginning, but the reason I was focusing on documentary is I oversee unscripted acquisitions at CBC, so that's why I was speaking to that. Yeah, I mean, I think what Vanessa said was really important in terms of like, I believe that CBC is willing to take risks, but I do think, from a financial perspective, I do think having other viable financing on board, working with partners, CBC is very open to international co-productions. Like, I think all of that is helpful in creating a package that would be interesting for CBC in particular, and I think a lot of other platforms. I wouldn't put CBC in a box in terms of no, they wouldn't be interested in a Black Mirror type of concept.
Historically, it's like when I look at the content on CBC, I don't see my niche, my genre thing there necessarily.
And I definitely hear that, but I definitely think, like I said, like we are at a very particular turning point because we are trying to attract a younger audience, and obviously, like I've mentioned 1,000 times, our digital approach would probably is changing the commissioning approach as well. So I would definitely encourage you to take ideas like that to CBC. I would not assume that they are outside of the box. I think CBC is very open, as long as we feel like a title would be able to connect with our audience and sort of abides to our core values and mandate.
I just wanted to check in and see if either one of you had any thoughts you wanted to add to that question.
I think I can jump in because I heard, you're saying, what chance do you have? I think that's what I really heard, in that you've got an idea, and how does somebody break out with an idea and get through the clutter? I think looking back over where unique ideas turned into hits, it's easy to do that and say, oh, okay, that was a great decision. And it's harder to look at unique ideas, like really, really out of the box thinking, and go, I can see a hit in that. But we learn off of what has worked, and that's where we find the connective tissue to say this is something that we would, and I would say always try break out of the box thinking ideas, because that's what's going to continue to change the viewing experience, and a multi-generational viewing experience. What I'm watching is different than what my teens are watching, is different from what my parents are watching, and we have to be speaking to all of them, all of our platforms. So I don't have an answer as to how it works specifically, other than to go back truly on find like-minded, talk to as many distributors about your concept if it's developed that you can. Find out what the international market might be for that, because you could find that this would be huge in Europe. Great. Now there's a tail for that. You may not get the financing, but you could hear that there's interest in this concept, or it's very big outside of just Canada and here. We do have a lot of formats that come from international that land here that I'm sure a majority of the viewing audience has no idea that's where they started. So I think it's really, really worth talking to as many people as possible. I'm sorry, I forget who said it. I think it was you, Chloe. But if you can find a way to trial your idea in a short form that could then, be it goes on YouTube or it's entered into a festival that proves people want to see this, it can be the starting point to then a bigger feature, a bigger series or something. And I know none of these are quick answers, but I think they're all stepping stones to get there. Anyways.
And Julie, any
I was
final
just going to
thoughts on that?
say, we're open to anything, and there are people here from Hollywood Suite. We don't have huge budgets, but I think that we're very helpful in trying to help people at least find the right opportunity. We also partner with other broadcasters, so we can come in on a second window, or we can work with another broadcaster. So we're very open. But to Vanessa's point and Chloe's, trialing that audience, building that conversation around your content to prove that it has legs and can cut through, I think that's very important and valuable advice.
So you're talking about, I make my short film, it comes to Reelworld, people like it, and then I approach you with an extension. Is that idea? Is that
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand that's kind of like I understand that's the way. That's the way we're all.
I think that's a way to get there, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I know I'm getting the cut it, but there is one more question. And
I just wanted to ask, I think it's going to contradict this last question, but what I'm seeing on your services is the power of the niche audience. I worked on a show called Less Than Kosher, which is on Hollywood Suite.
Love it.
Which is a Jewish-centric content, uncompromisingly made for a Jewish audience. Another example is Late Bloomer, which is on Crave, which has huge numbers in the Punjabi audience. I mean, both of those audiences are what, 2% of the population? but
There's appeal though, like Less Than Kosher. Just it hasn't launched yet, but it is coming in December. That show hooks you from the second because it's so human, and
happened. It was triggered by, you know, a tiny service called Highball TV.
yes.
And it premiered at the Jewish Film Festival.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, it built grassroots audience, which is sort of what I think we've all been leaning into. So you build that grassroots so it can go. But that's the story in itself, if you take away some of the elements that you're thinking are more specific, it's just a very human story, and it's hilarious. December on Hollywood Suite.
Okay, everyone. We do have to bring this panel to a close. But thank you so much for joining us today as we explored finding and building an audience for your content. And thank you to Julie and Chloe and also, I'm so sorry, Vanessa. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your insights.
Thank
Thanks,
you for
everyone.
stepping in.